A few weeks ago, I posted a video asking if Nintendo has become lazy, but some of the comments had asked for a longer video discussing the topic, which is exactly what I did in this video. I present to you In my previous video, I touched on two main points as to why Nintendo may be seen as recently being lazy. The first point was the recycled game/content on the Nintendo Switch from previous systems. The list of games remade for the Switch is quite larger than I originally thought. But for this video, I just want to focus on the games published by Nintendo. Let's go through some of the main remastered games and games with recycled content in a beautiful montage. Hit it! In total, there's been 9 games remade and 13 games remastered on the Switch. To clarify, remade games include games that are reborn with entirely different elements, however, staying true to the original game. Remastered games are games with a digital facelift to an older game, with better environmental design and improved character designs. Again, these are just games published by Nintendo. That's a total of 23 games sold at full price as new games. And just to give some perspective, as of July 2022, there's been a total of 85 games published by Nintendo, which means 27% of games published by Nintendo have been remakes or remasters. That might not seem like a lot, but essentially 1 in every 4 games has been a remake or remaster. For the most part, I do love these games and I'm glad we have them on the Switch, but I wouldn't mind that so many games are remade or remastered if perhaps they were available similar to the N64 games that are available on Nintendo Switch Online, where you have access to a pool of games for an annual fee, versus having to pay full price to play each game. Now, some may argue Nintendo is not lazy for porting the Wii U games onto the Switch, considering the Wii U only sold slightly over 13 million copies, and so for the most, these ports were new games. But the reality is they are not new games. But putting that point aside, you can then argue Nintendo was lazy with their marketing for the Wii U, from not enough ads, to few new Nintendo games, to failing to show why consumers need the Wii U. And now we're feeling the consequences on the Switch. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's hard not to think Nintendo has become a bit lazy, potentially as early as the Wii U. Another point I touched on in part 1 is the lack of content in the new games we do get. I just want to highlight that yes, Nintendo has delivered some amazing new games with loads of content. Games like Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and Animal Crossing New Horizons. These are amazing games, and as most predecessors should be, had more content compared to previous entries in their respective series. But there's also been a number of games that have fans scratching their heads on why there is so little content. The one game that comes immediately to mind is Super Mario Party. In most entries in the N64 and GameCube era, we would get at minimum 6 boards. In the first ever Mario Party, we got 8 boards. But in Super Mario Party, we get only 4 boards. Only 4, and they are the smallest boards ever. Then you have the various Mario sports games. Mario Golf Super Rush lacks so much creativity in the courses and playable modes compared to Mario Golf Toadstool Tour on the GameCube, where each hole is so unique and so well thought out. Princess Peach's Castle has more creativity alone in a single course than Super Rush. Then of course, there's the different modes you can play like the Birdie Challenge and Ring Mode, and you can actually unlock characters. Mario Tennis Aces, I will admit, is jam-packed with content, a large pool of characters, and creative chords. But honestly, Mario Power Tennis on the GameCube was also a very strong entry, and has arguably equal amount of content. But Mario Strikers Battle League on the Switch is a bit disappointing when compared to Super Mario Strikers on the GameCube, as Battle League offers only 1 more additional playable character, 2 less fields to play on, and less modes. And I just don't understand why a sequel in a game series would have less content than the one before. And sure, future DLC could provide more content for some of these games, but at the same time, a lot of the DLC we do get feels like content that should have already been included in the game from the beginning. There seems to be a lot of focus on DLC these days, perhaps to the point where it prevents us from getting new games at all. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a great example. It's been 8 years since Mario Kart 8 came out on the Wii, and instead of Mario Kart 9, we get paid DLC of old courses, but just remastered, and until the end of 2023. I mean, the idea is cool, but why are we getting this 8 years later and not earlier in the game's lifetime? Now, an argument can also be made that the lack of content and creativity in these aforementioned games is not the fault of Nintendo, as they were developed by second and third party developers. But at the end of the day, these are Nintendo Switch exclusives, featuring Nintendo's main mascot. And it just doesn't make sense why these games are lacking in almost every department compared to games from decades ago. Even games like Paper Mario Origami King or Pokemon Sword and Shield just feel so subpar compared to earlier entries in the series. Paper Mario 1000 Year Door was true perfection, with such a strong story and so much detail, compared to Origami King that really wasn't that fun to play. Again, I recognize Nintendo has released some amazing games in the Switch's lifetime, but those games seem far and few between. This next issue I'll be discussing is one that I'm sure almost every Switch player has experienced, and that's the Joy-Con drift issue. Joy-Con drift is when your joystick starts detecting motion that actually isn't there, causing your character or cursor to move unpredictably, which can be very frustrating. The drift is believed to be caused by dust or debris making their way into the controller underneath the rubber cap that's designed to keep the interior clean. But some users have completely disassembled the controller and found worn down contacts, which is also believed might be causing the issue due to repetitive use. It's nice that Nintendo has been good about fixing these issues for free. However, this should be the bare minimum. And even still, free involves the hassle of going through the process of requesting a repair, shipping off your affected Joy-Con, and then waiting weeks for it to make it back to you. Even then, it's not guaranteed the issue has been fixed. Another alternative is to just buy a new set of Joy-Cons. But when you factor in that Joy-Cons cost $80 USD, sometimes that's not a feasible option. And I've come to conclude that it's not a matter of if the Joy-Con drift issue will happen, it's a matter of when. Just imagine having a Switch Lite. The real question is, why hasn't this drift issue been fixed on a production level? Nintendo has been aware of this issue for years now, and yet the issue appears to persist. Could it be that perhaps they are too lazy to address the issue? It's just frustrating that I can start up an old system like the N64, or even the Super Nintendo, that I've owned for decades, and have no problem with using the controllers. And I'm not confident I can say the same thing about the Switch and Joy-Cons, even 3 years from now. I know this video may be controversial, and I already know there may be some comments saying I'm complaining too much. That's not my intent. My intent of this video is to have a discussion and point out reasons why I think Nintendo has become a bit lazy recently. But at the end of the day, I will always love Nintendo, and have loved my experience with the Switch. As always, let us know what you think down below, and remember to keep pressing A. If you like this content, make sure to check out these other videos.